right before your trail run, if you have 10 minutes in the morning, or you will have 10 minutes in the morning, you've got to give yourself 10 minutes in the morning. It is a really good idea to prime the primary areas that are going to be needed / used / activated. Your main sections of your kinetic chain. In other words, for example, your arms are not the most important section of the kinetic chain. Even though it is important, it's not the most important. People could argue that the most important are the hips. I like that idea. I like the idea that the hips are the most important, but equally you can say the ankle, the foot and ankle is the most important. So it's chicken. That's my chicken and the egg question. What comes first, the ankle, foot and ankle, or the hips? I am going to go with the hips. Number 1, primary. Number 2, ankle. Number 3, this is going to be surprising, core. And number 4, you'll be really surprised at this, knees. So if I could put into perspective the primary areas of work: 1, hips; 2, ankle; 3, core; 4, knees. And I'll explain why in a little bit, but let's get the priming series out of the way. So the first thing you want to do is assume a 90-90 position. They call this a 90-90, 90 degrees at the hip, 90 degrees at the knees. And I actually just like to sit in this position for a little while because it is a fantastic stretch position. I give this to all my clients, all my patients, all my followers, really. So it starts like this, in this 90-90. It's a great idea just to wake up by tipping forward, opening up your spine. So I'm actually stretching the lower back and my left glute. And then what I can do from here is I can walk around a half circle. So this is where the half circle begins. And I can maneuver my way around the circle because anywhere in that range could be tight or stiff. And I just want to see what's going on. So I can drop in at the end. And that just becomes a lovely stretch. Now what is very, very important here is that my right hip gets a little bit of a stretch. What I want to do is I want to squeeze my right bum so that I can open up my right hip flexor. And remember, your glute maximus is the antagonist, if you will, of the hip flexor. So the moment you clench an antagonist, the agonist will stretch. Does that make sense? It's the opposite of the opposite, you can say. So I'm clenching my glute. By clenching my glute, my hip flexor opens. It's a beautiful line that opens. And that opening goes from my right knee all the way up to my right shoulder. And I can extend it into my right hand. You might not see this, but I'm actually touching a rock right at the end here. And I'm getting a very long stretch. I don't want to hold it for too long. It's really just an opening scene, and some of you might have a specific stiffness or tightness in that range, and you might want to work on that, might want to wake it up, if you will. Okay, so I'm going to do that on both sides. As you can see, I have a jacket here, just so the knees are super comfy. So do it on both sides. I start once again coming forward, dropping down, opening up the lower back and also the right glute that is attached to the lower back. I can just live here for a little while. Feels good to open. Also want to make sure that I teach you and tell you to breathe. You want to take a deep inhale, and what you really want to do is you want to have a sigh of relief. Because what that signals a non-fight or flight response. That signals that the body is safe, that you are feeling safe, and the nervous system is feeling safe to open up or lengthen the ranges that you want to lengthen. So I want to lengthen my glutes a little bit here, just get a little bit of a stretch opening up my lower back as well. And it's safe to do that, and I can breathe out. Just bear that in mind. The best kind of stretch, passive stretch, will happen when you are relaxed, not when you're huffing and puffing, because that signals fight or flight, and fight or flight, the body's not interested in stretch. The body's interested in action, tension, right? So I started to the front, and I can walk my way over all the way around that half circle. considering this whole thing is a circle. Oh wow, my left hip flexor is quite stiff. It's an interesting angle, so I can use this space now, squeeze my glute, squeeze, hip flexor opens. I can stop here, or I can reach a little bit further, and that just lengthens the line. Once again, a calm breath in and out. A calm breath in and out to signal safety for stretch relaxation. Okay, that's done. Now we get to the meat of this priming series, and that is you want to wake up the glutes by simply taking it from a lengthened position into a shortened position. In other words, the back section here is shortened, clenched, but you can see some other magic happening here. You can see a big stretch of my pelvis. So this whole section is opening up. And then I want to control it going down slowly. I want to slowly control it going down. The moment I touch the ground, I come back up. It's important to thread in a rhythm of breathing. Now, it doesn't matter when you breathe in. Some people breathe in on the down, some people breathe out on the up. You can switch that around. You can breathe out going down, or in coming up, doesn't really matter. As long as there is a coordinated rhythm of breathing in the movement, because you know what that teaches is the brain or the central nervous system or the motor planning system, is it just teaches the central nervous system or the motor planning system to coordinate breathing with movement. It becomes very clever in terms of conservation of energy. So that, I mean, what you want is breathing and movement to be coherent. You don't want an incoherent relationship between your breathing and your movement. So it's just a good practice. So we're going to go along and do about 10 of these. What I also like to do is, as I get into the exercise a little bit more, I prefer to touch and go. So to inhale, touch and go. What you can also see is that my movement at my hip is kind of independent of the movement around my trunk. My core is holding still. My glutes, my hips are moving. It's a great little practice too. So what you don't want is too much of a compensatory action. You're folding here, you're getting up here, folding here. No, let your core be a stabilizing force. So I'm assuming this is about 10. That's great priming. I'm going to switch it around. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Touch, go. Touch, go. You want to practice that explosive action, like the agonist. You want to practice the kinetic chain to fire when you need to. And what is signaling is the moment I touch down, I can get up. It's like force and power. You don't just want to work in this range where you're going up and down at the same pace. No. When you're doing trail running, it's about instant response, quick response, land, go, and that has to be threaded into your training. So everything that I do is very specific to what happens inside of the sport. Okay, you've got that. That's number one. Now, number two is just as important. Number two, if that was the glutes and the pelvis opening up and stretching, remember whatever happens on one side, the opposite thing is happening. So let me just go through this again, because it's a very, very important point. If I do this movement correctly, right now my glutes are in stretch. I go from stretch to shortening, contraction. That's what's happening at the back here, shortening, contract. What's happening in the front, if I do this well, it's complete opening over here. So this stretches while that contracts. Shortening, lengthening. Clever. Bear that in mind for the future of the series. Just bear that in mind in how you move a little bit later. Okay, shortening, stretching. Now, the same thing is going to happen in this next move. If I was shortening the glutes, stretching the pelvis, I'm now going to wake up my hip flexors, which you should know is incredibly important in the running biomechanics. Incredibly important. In fact, you can argue if hips are number one, then hip flexor and glutes are number 1 and 2, depending on how you see it. So if I'm working into my hip flexor, my glutes are going to be doing something very interesting. Let me show you. In order to prime the hip flexor, I'm going to do a very simple action. And that simple action involves the following. It looks like I am in a child's pose. It looks like I'm in a half a child's pose. If that's the child's pose, something similar to that, you know. I start in the stretch position. I end a stretch position for my glutes or my posterior chain. And what happens here in my hip flexor, I'm going to lengthen this hip flexor under load. So you can see my hip flexor opens up as I drop down, closes as I go up. And this is just priming both hip flexors at the same time. And the very cool thing about this is your core is getting involved. At the bottom of this exercise, two things happen. One, glutes get a squeeze. As the glutes get a squeeze, the hip flexor opens up. Great, that's what we need. Length and strength. Strength here, length here. My core is going to get involved. Because as I do this, what is that? It's a plank. So I'm involving my core in this exercise, and my core stays relatively neutral. In other words, it's pretty much staying the same shape, and that shape is a little bit of a tailbone tuck. So I'm slightly tucking my tailbone, taking my body all the way forward, lengthening my hip flexor, but it's lengthening under load. It's not just the hip flexor stretch, it's lengthening under load. I get all the way to the bottom, coordinate my breathing. Now, if that is priming the hip flexor, particularly the hip flexor, if that is priming the hip flexor, or just waking it up, what's the next level? What's the next step? The next step would be to train and really prime the hip flexor. And let me show you how that works. If that was what's called the scorpion, the preparation for scorpion, I'm going to show you what the full scorpion looks like, and you're going to make sense of it. You will make sense of it. Here's this full scorpion. You're in this sort of plank position, making myself comfortable here. In this plank position, you kick one leg up overhead. Watch the magic happen. Let me tuck this in so that you can actually see what's going on here. as I travel forward, which hip flexor is lengthening? My right hip flexor. So I'm lengthening under load. I'm actually loading it. It's lengthening, but it's being loaded. To show you the other side. You want to do about 5 on each side. At least 5. Slow, long, lengthened, loaded movements. So that is, we've just opened up the glutes, or we've activated the glutes, we've opened up the pelvis, we've prepared and switched on, lit up, even loaded the hip flexor. We could do something extra for the glutes. Okay, so we can have an exercise that is just almost pure glute, because what the glutes are also, the glutes are one of two things for the most part. The glutes are a powerhouse of movement. It's a power generator. If you look at Usain Bolt or any of the sprinters, the reason they are that good is the glutes. Number one, glute hip flexor relationship. Of course there are other things too, but they have powerful force generators. And so if I can show you, I always like to imagine like the completely dangerous horse kick. Stand behind a horse, do the wrong thing, and what you're going to get is that. The only thing that generates power for the kickback is the bum. So it's good to work the glute or the bum, the glutes as a power generator, but also as a stabilizer. Because when you're doing trail running, you're not sprinting really. There might be parts of your run where you'd like to sprint, but ultimately, you want to, the glutes wants to be a stabilizer as well, to hold the system and to keep your pelvis generally stable. You don't want to have a floppy pelvis. You want to have hips that actually hold. This section here is so important. This pelvic bowl, this triangle, if you will. So let me show you how to activate and load the hips. Nothing that you haven't seen before. If you know me, I'm not the biggest fan. In fact, I'm not a fan of glute bridges. But there is one or two bridges that I'll go, okay, yeah, I'll take that. And they are very, very specific to trail running. So let's have a look at the movement now. So of course, once again, you can see as I switch on my glutes, as my hips, my glutes fire up here, my hips lengthen, my hip flexors lengthen. So here's the wake up for the bum. Open up. Right hip is stabilizing, left hip flexor opening, coordinated with my arm. And guess what? Running is an opposite arm, opposite leg movement. Running is a single leg biomechanical movement because you're always just landing on one foot. So it's ultimately a single leg exercise. Stabilizing with my right hip, opening my left. I can influence that a little bit by completely opening up the hips. And once again, you can see this beautiful stretch line here, and I'll close it up again. Open, and what you want to see and feel is complete stabilization of this movement. Let me do the other side as well. You want to do about 10 on each side. Open, close. So I did about 5. just where my pelvis were level, and then 5 where I'm rotating my pelvis. So far we have waking up the glutes, opening up the pelvis, lighting up the hip flexor, working on the stabilizers of the glutes in that bridge. We also want to work down the lateral profile, the side profile. Many people, many beginners runners and also seasoned runners that have kind of suffered from overuse injury, eventually ITB issues catch up with them, whether it's ITB at the proximal end or at the distal end at the knee. So I want to make sure we cover that ground. And one way you can cover that ground is actually stabilizing or learning to stabilize the lateral side, both sides, and also strengthening them up. So, because what you have is you've got this building, right, which is your physical system. And your physical system is basically, because we're bipedal, we move forward. Our gait cycle is like this. This is how we move through life. We move through life forward. We don't walk sideways, not crabs. So we don't walk sideways, which means our lateral side doesn't really get work. But it does come in to support the system. It's like the architecture of the building that holds it up on the side, on each side, and makes life easy going forward. To put it in simple terms. So, I want to light up that area. I want to work on stabilizing the lateral side of my body. So let me show you how you do that. 2 easy ways, 2 exercises, and you can combine them into one to make it easier. Okay, so the first one is super simple and something that you would have seen before, but it's always great doing these things in the correct, like packaging them beautifully. And that's what my role is for you. My role is to show the expert, the beginner or expert trail runner, intermediate trail runner, that if you package these exercises into just the right combination, it's going to feed your physical system the way you want it to be fed. Nourish, shall I say. Nourish your biomechanical system the way you would like it to be nourished. Okay, so here we go. Lateral side. When you bend your knees, we're going to do a side lift. You don't want your knees out in front of you. Actually, what you would want is your hip flexor to be open. I prefer open hip flexors, always. I'll explain that another time. But there's a reason why I prefer your hip flexor to be lengthened. Okay, so step 1. You've got a side lift. And immediately you can see, or you should be able to see what's being activated. The whole left side of my body is resisting gravity. So everything here is being worked, lit up, activated, switched on. I want to have my elbow right underneath my shoulder. Very compact. Compact is what you want here. So the first one is easy. I'm just going to do 5 for demonstration. Leg is straight. Keep this leg parallel to the ground. Drop your hips down with control. Drive up. You want to go all the way down. Press all the way up. And you want to see control. You do that both sides. We're going to do both sides. Give you a different view. Elbow underneath the shoulder, compact, lift hip. When I lift hip, I want to squeeze my bum. I don't want my hips to be stretched here. I want to squeeze the glute. Leg parallel to the ground. Take strain off my neck by looking down. Lower, push up. Notice I'm going down slow because I want to be able to control my weight. Then I want to push up fast. You'll notice the theme here. Action is quick. Control is slow. Okay. Lateral side. Halfway done. I said there were 2, which you're combining into sort of one, mushing into one. The next one is absolute magic. A lot of these exercises exist in the world. Some, I feel like I completely made it up myself, which I'm very proud of. This might be one of them. I'm not saying it is mine, but I'm pretty much saying it's mine. So what do we call this one? This is a dynamic side lift, where I've named it starfish, into cocoon, into twist and reach. Just remember those words: starfish, cocoon, twist and reach. This is how it goes. Same starting position as before. Partly why these exercises are easy and simple is because they are easy and simple. Now, they I'll get to the term. I'll get to the word. One feeds into the next is what I'm saying. The principles of one become the principles of all of them. They're pretty much similar in principle. They might look different, they might look sexy or boring, but the principles all remain the same. Control, speed, posture, core control, etc. So here we go. Side lift. 1. Getting ready for the starfish. Starfish position. Expressive. Cocoon. Elbow to knee. Twist and reach. Look what's happening here. I'm turning my torso down to the floor. My pelvis, my hips is being lifted up and controlled. So I'm keeping this height and I'm reaching my right arm away from my right leg. Dynamically come back to the cocoon. Open up into the starfish. Dynamically come back to cocoon. Twist and reach. Cocoon. Starfish. Very animated. And I encourage animated, round. Open. Round. That is amazing. Watch from the back. It's going to give you some clues into how to move well. It's dynamic. It is, it's fresh, and it's complex. This is an example of a complex exercise. And you want to have great control. You want to have great rhythm. You want to move through this with grace, shall I say. One, 2. Cocoon, starfish, cocoon, twist and reach, cocoon, starfish, cocoon, twist and reach, cocoon, starfish. So, I think we've covered glutes, opening up the back, opening up the pelvis. We've covered the hip flexor, lengthening and strengthening with the scorpion prep and the scorpion. We've covered glutes as a stabilizer in that very interesting bridge. We've covered the side lift, the lateral side for ITB, 2 exercises that involve just a natural side lift done really well, and this extra sexy one, which is the twist and reach. That is your hip complex or combination done. I will say that those movements can be done at a beginner's level. Pretty much the way I did it. You can do it, you can increase the repetition, which I think is fantastic for endurance. The more you can do this, so we can, for example, I did repetitions from about between 5 and 10. An expert level will be able to do all of them up to about 20 repetitions per set. Does that make sense? So we start from a beginner's level, 5 to 10. Light it up, switch it on, let your brain build a relationship with the movement. At expert level, you should be able to pull off or have the endurance, grit, capacity for up to 20 repetitions for any one of those exercises. That's the tick box. But essentially, as you've seen, I've worked the back, I've worked the front, I've worked the side. In all of those, the core is involved. So it's not just the hips and the core, they go together. Lower back, the lateral side, and the front. They all work together. And if you can package those 4 to 5 movements into one 10-minute, 15-minute routine, then you've got an injury prevention routine, basically. Hope that helps. I know that helps. I know that will be the best package at all that you've ever done from a hip preparation perspective. We're going to go move up the chain now, and what we're going to do next is we're going to do more running specific action. We're still focused on the glutes and the hips. We're still focused up there, but it's a bit more running specific, and I'll show you why. This is a very, very important point I'm about to make. Okay, stay tuned. No, stay here. So why this next section is important. You've just had 5 exercises that were purely built around the hips, so specific to the hips. You were not in standing at all. It was all that movement was, or all that nourishment was dedicated to front, side, back of your hips. Now, this is the next section. The next section is critical, because what is running? Running is a single leg action. Think about this. Walking, pretty much you can argue single, 1, 2. It's basically falling forward with a lot of aplomb and control. Running is the exact same thing at speed, but essentially that is running. So you need to work on running. Well, basically, if you do a sports biomechanics course, or you went to my level of studies, you would know that specificity in sport is critical for program planning, exercise, etc. So if you're a runner, a trail runner, you've got to work on a single leg. Period. The end. So let me show you where you're going to start with your single leg exercise. You start simply by, okay, I'm going to stand on a single leg, and I'm going to work through my coordination, my control in balance. So this is proprioception. I just want to see what that feels like, and then I want to come up. And as I do this, just notice what's happening. As I clench or straighten up this leg, I've got to straighten this one up. My glutes switch on here. As I switch on that glute, my hip flexor lengthens, opens up. My hip flexor here shortens, because this one is the one that's going to take that next step. So hip flexor, glute, hip flexor, glute. The relationship is so important. So start by just warming up in this aeroplane or arabesque, whatever you want to call it, single leg, just lighting up. And yes, you could do this in your shoes, or you can do this bare feet. They're both good. Notice, I want to try and coordinate breath work in this movement. I can thread in some other coordinated movements, so a bit more running specific. As I do this, my breath, my core, has to work alongside of the biomechanics that's going on. Now, what you can't see from the side there is that the running movement involves, let me ask you this question first. how do humans walk? What's the gait cycle? Do we walk this way? Right shoulder, right hip, left shoulder, left hip, left shoulder, left hip, right, left leg? Or do we walk or run left hip, right shoulder, left hip, right shoulder, right hip, left shoulder? What is the running action? What is the biomechanical gait cycle that humans do? It's a course, it's opposite. Right shoulder left, left shoulder right hip. So it would be clever, it would be smart to not simply just do an arabesque or an aeroplane that looks like this. Why not coordinate what comes through in running, which is right shoulder, left hip. And as you build in this level of coordination or motor planning or control, this movement or this flow will then become associated in your brain with your own running action. And what you really want is, you want flow, you want this, because what's going on here is I'm making myself very aerodynamic. As I throw my shoulders forward, the air, and I'm running, the air bounces off my chest, moves off. Same when I go this way, bounces off my chest, moves off to the right, arguably. If I just stood straight, if I ran straight shoulders, what's happening here is coming directly against me, and it's going to cause some drag. This is very running specific and very expert specific level. So the expert will have to think about that. If you're looking for that 1% advantage over your opponent, if you're looking for the 1% advantage over your opponent, you want to have that coordinated action. But just remember, you want to start with a little bit of arabesque movements on both sides, just to know that it's woken up, etc. Let's move on to the next one. Nearly done, Missy. Okay, what I want to start off with is I'm a big fan of simplifying, even though this is way too much words for a video. I really like to simplify. That's why I have only 5 priming movements. That's it. You don't need more. The same way for a trail runner, you want to have one exercise that really tests your strength, or tests your leg strength in full range, like in all its angles. So let me show you what that exercise is. There's one exercise that you want to tick the box for. It's not a pistol squat, but it's similar to a pistol squat. Think about the principle. Whether you're a hiker or a trail runner and you're going uphill and you want to know what's your maximal strength that you can push, well, you really just want to be comfortable with pushing your own body weight. But your own body weight, and even if you're light, your own body weight on a single leg. Remember I said trail running is a single leg sport. Even though there's lots of actions involved, lots of other coordinated limbs, but it's ultimately a single leg sport. So strengthen up a single leg maximally. And one of the best movements you can do is the cowboy sit. I think it's called the cowboy sit. And then from this cowboy sit, you get up into standing. So let me show you how that works. You're going to sit down like this. That's your cowboy sit. In fact, you start relaxed, completely relaxed from a resting position. And what you want to do here is you want to power yourself upward using your whichever leg that is going to support you, in this case my left, and my right, I want to lift off the ground as early as possible, and when I come back down, I want to put this right leg down as late as possible, and this is what it looks like. From inaction to action. Lower yourself down, all the way down, all the way down. Delay this one as long as possible. And when you get to advanced, intermediate, or expert level, you want to ultimately be able to lift this foot up super early and put this foot down, the floating leg down, pretty late. I'm between intermediate and expert, right, in terms of my own strength. Yep, lift. Going down, you want to load, and especially you want to control that load. Control, delay this one going down, and you sit and relax. If you're a beginner, you simply take this floating leg and use it as much as possible to help you get up. So it would look like this. Maybe take it off at the end. Put it back down quite early. Lower yourself down all the way. And you want to test that on both sides. What would that look like on the other side? Let me face you. This ground is sloping. Cowboy sit. Hup. As early as possible. Drop down. Load, 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 load. Completely relax. Flip. And notice how quick my legs sprung into action. If you wanted to use this as a leg building exercise, you want to do it maximally. And I think 10, if you're an intermediate, 10 is more than enough. If you're at advanced level, 15. It's hard. Beginner, 5 with support of the opposite leg. But that is your ultimate leg strengthener, because what's going on here is I'm working end range strength. My knee is that bent, my hip is that bent, and to be able to strengthen and pick my body up at this angle is incredibly hard. So it's also something that you're going to be able to do right up until you are 80 years old. Okay, let's move over to the next bit of the series, which is critical, and this bit is called the single leg quarter squat. Can you hear me? Okay, so just a little first principles here quickly. Running is a single leg sport. What is the, if you're doing running specific exercises, what would be the best specific kind of single leg squat you could do? Well, the answer is a single leg squat that mimics the ranges that happens in trail running. How deep or how much is the range that happens in the hip and knee and ankle range of movement in trail running? Is it this low or this sharp or this acute? No, it's actually that obtuse. It's super open. When you're running, the maximum angle of a trail runner is probably there. It's not here, unless you're going uphill and you're literally climbing. But ultimately, you are going to be working at that knee bend angle and this hip bend angle. That's it for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 kilometers. That's it. So it would make sense to build strength specific to trail running that predominantly uses those angles. The best way I can demonstrate this is in the single leg quarter squat. Let's do it this way. What you need is something behind you. I've got a little rock. So there's something behind you, it's just there to, you're not learning to balance. You don't need that, not just yet. what you want to learn is you want to be able to mostly load the leg that you're standing on. If I take this foot off and I'm doing a whole lot of single leg squat, that's fine. But the moment it gets a bit too complex, which you'll see, my brain is going to be thinking of balancing way too much. I don't want my brain to be thinking of how to balance. I want my brain to be thinking of how to move well and build strength and capacity when it gets complex. So I take the complexity out of it. I make it mostly simple. Put that foot down there. Now I have support. I can now do a single leg quarter squat up and down. Now there's a couple of things that you really need to pay attention to. Because running, you want to make running a hip dominant movement. And I'll explain that again. I have a lot to explain in another video. But for the most part, you want to have hip dominance. In order to have hip dominance, you have to load mostly into the heel of the foot. You don't want to load into the forefoot. Not quite yet. You want to load the heel, put all the body weight into the heel so that the hip takes most of the work. If you go the other way around, which is fine. If you go the other way around and you say, okay, I want to make it a knee dominant movement, it's okay, it's fine. I don't necessarily think that's the best. Hear me out. If I work knee dominance in a single leg quarter squat, what's going to happen here is I'm never going to get to this glute. I'm never going to get there because I'm making it knee dominant. You can see my knees are going forward. You can see it's being loaded. If I do a hip dominant squat, my knee gets loaded anyway. So why not do a hip dominant squat when you get the knee? And choose not to do the knee dominant where you don't get the hip. Rather choose hip dominance over knee dominance. You've also got a lot of muscle and meat around this section of the body, much more than you have around the knee. The knee is more of a hinge, and the hip is a ball and socket. It's got a lot of options and a lot of meat on the bone, so to speak. So it's got a longer longevity profile than the knee. Does that make sense? I hope it does. So we started off with single leg, quarter squat. Once again, my torso is stabilizing in a neutral shape. I'd like my arms to do something, but essentially nothing. And that's my start. Hold this section, hold that section, move this section. So it really becomes all about your hips. I don't have much weight on the back foot, by the way. This foot is just to help me balance. So I'm not leaning into it. Nope. The weight is all going forward, but in the heel, essentially, on my right foot. Dropping down, load. And where this becomes interesting is when you start, well, first of all, you can do this stabilizing action where you say that my arms and my torso is not going to do anything except be stable while my hips move. It gets a bit more exciting when you employ some running coordinated movement. What I'm practicing here is I'm practicing a level of core, holding, just guiding with the core. But I've got this beautiful rotation working here. Notice I'm only going a quarter of the way. And by the time I get to 15 to 20, my glutes are fired up. And that, folks, is essentially all you need as a trail runner. Variations of that single leg squat. So, to take it up in load, I could wear a weighted vest or a backpack that I put a whole lot of things in it, water bottles, or make it heavier. So, a weighted vest, I would say between 20 and 30 pounds in a weighted vest is a good start. You don't need to go more than that, because beyond that, you're not going to get more benefits for trail running. Okay, there's a certain point where more weights are not necessarily helpful. You want to work with your own body weight and a little bit more. That's clever. So, to build muscle, to build the architecture, you would increase the weight and the repetition. And I will put that in the video for you. And I'll put it in structure of a beginner, an intermediate, and advanced. So that's the weight load that it can increase to build the architecture. To build the coordination is you want to thread in the running action, the breathing coordination, so breath, complexity of running action, and those three things, biomechanic, breath, core control, those three things working together to create this beautiful coordinated, synthesized, coherent movement. I think it was Ferrari that said that if a machine or a car moves beautifully, it's because it is, I forgot the saying, something that is moving beautifully is working really well. That is essentially what Mr. Ferrari said. If it's moving beautifully, then the inner mechanisms, the biomechanics, the coordination of motor planning and breath work and core control and biomechanics all coherently working together to complete the action. That's what makes a beautiful, beautiful movement system. So what I had quarter squat for the most part, and just variations of quarter squat. You take it up in complexity, you take it up in load. Aha, I forgot the most important one. For the advanced athlete or the intermediate that is wanting to go advanced, or even just the intermediate, you've got to employ one super important thing, and I forgot it in this video, but you've got to jump. You've got to have some plyometric work. So this is what it looks like. First of all, I started with just a simple load, just good biomechanical work, no complexity. Then I added some complexity to it. Complexity. I add the final layer. Because you want that coordinated movement from the foot and the ankle. Does that make sense? Plyometric, bounce, elasticity, and now you've got the complete package because you've got strength, sport-specific strength. You've got the coordinated breath, core work, biomechanics. You've got this complete system that also now jumps as well because it's the foot and ankles involved. That's trail running for you. And this whole package that just works perfectly.